Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. It's Monday, which means former President Donald Trump is back in court in New York City. He started the day getting fined $1,000 for, the judge said, violating the gag order. This is that comment he made about the jury being 95% Democrats. That's ridiculous. Remember, that was the one he fixed by saying on the tail end of it, like in New York City, which could have been a broader commentary on jurors here. But no, this judge would never miss an opportunity to punish Trump and to act exasperated at his absolutely terrible behavior, like speaking about the allegations against him and the criminal trial against him. Now, a stern warning that jail time could be next if there are more violations of what is clearly an unconstitutional gag order. I don't know. I feel like Trump should be hoping for it. I really do. What more can happen to the guy besides jail time to rally people behind him and realize what's happening here? I'll ask Victor Davis Hanson what he thinks, whether jail time on these alleged gag order violations might be good for Trump or bad for him. That's in 2 seconds. Meantime, Columbia University has canceled its commencement. Boo-hoo. As the hateful protests continue. And I couldn't care less. I don't feel bad for them at all. Why'd you send your kids there? They shouldn't have gone to Columbia. You knew what you were getting. Please. You go to SMU, you go to Columbia, you're going to be having two very different experiences. Reconsider if you're normal. Reconsider Columbia University. You knew that. You knew that when you sent your kids there. That's why they're not going to have a commencement. And by the way, those same kids didn't have a commencement 4 years ago when they graduated from high school because of COVID. So there you go. You made a bad choice. Also, a once and now former potential Trump VP pick, Kristi Noem, embarrasses herself again while on her book tour. It's almost like she's trying to ruin her reputation. Joining us today, Victor Davis Hanson. He is absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad to have him with me for the full show today. And he's also the author of a brand new book that you must go buy and read. It's called The End of Everything: How Wars Descend into Annihilation. And Victor is an expert on warfare. He's been writing about it and teaching about it for a long, long time now. The book is out tomorrow, but it's available for pre-order right now. The End of Everything. It's rising up the Amazon charts at this moment. Let's make it number one. That'll really irritate the people at Stanford, or he's at the Hoover Institution. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. A recent survey found that 7 in 10 parents get an average of 3 hours of sleep in any given night in their baby's first year. I mean, who hasn't been there? 3 hours. And you're grumpy and it ruins your day. And you know what else bad sleep does? It makes you eat more the next day. Moms, you deserve quality sleep. And here is a solution. Cozy Earth. One thing you don't need tossing and turning because you're too hot, you're sweaty, you're a prisoner in your sheets. The secret to better sleep is Cozy Earth's luxurious bedding products. Try it. And if you're wondering what to get your mom for Mother's Day, you try it. Get it for your mom. Okay? Use the code Megyn for 35% off at CozyEarth.com. Cozy Earth bedding products are crafted with temperature regulating technology, adapting to your body's needs through all phases of motherhood. You worried about commitment? Enjoy a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on all purchases. So you sleep on it for 100 nights. If you don't like it, you can send it back in for a full refund. Built to last through the hardest days and the longest nights of motherhood, this Mother's Day, treat mom to the luxuries she deserves with Cozy Earth bedding and sleepwear. And prioritize self-care and sleep health, which is very, very important to preventing bad things when you're older. Head over to CozyEarth.com and use promo code Megyn for 35% off your order. After placing your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. That would be nice because it gets you the discount. And then it also tells them that you heard the ad right here on the MK Show. Thanks for doing that. Victor, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Megyn.
So we'll get to the book, but there are a lot of lessons in these, ancient warfare stories for modern day America. And it's almost as if the outcome of our current day fights has been foretold. It could certainly be predicted based on some of the battles that you write about that may include names half the people don't know as a daily, on a daily basis, but the lessons are all there. Let's just kick it off with that. There's so much news to get to, but I just kick off what you think people will get out of the book when it comes to understanding modern day America.
Well, I picked ancient Thebes, the end of Carthage, the capture of Constantinople, the destruction of Christendom in Asia Minor, and then the fall of the Aztecs. And they all were very similar. All of these targeted places and empires and cities thought they were still robust, even though by any outside measure they were in decline. They were very naive. They thought that if they revolted or went to war against a stronger power, either allies would be on the horizon to help them, or something magically would happen to reinforce their defense. They had no appraisal of the type of people they were facing, an Alexander the Great or Scipio or Hernan Cortez or the Sultan Mehmet in the case of Constantinople, who really wanted to destroy them. I don't mean, and these are not destructions, Megyn, where they're Genghis Khan or Tamerlane. They sweep in, they kill everybody, rape the women, take the slaves, and leave. They systematically destroy the civilization. They destroy the infrastructure. They enslave any survivors. They kill all the people. They wipe out the language, the religion, and in 30 or 40 years, these places don't exist, and there's no memory of them, really. And when I look at the modern world, it was very strange that all the people on the contemporary scene who make these threats, we like these targeted cities, and they're very rare. I mean, most times you lose a war, you don't get completely erased your history and your existence destroyed. But when we hear what the Iranian mullahs say about Israel as a one-bomb state, or it will no longer exist, and it's good to have all the Jews in one place because they can take them out, and we think that's ridiculous. Or I think there's 25 instances where a Russian general or somebody in the Russian parliament have talked about using nuclear weapons to wipe out Ukraine because they feel it's an aberration. It doesn't exist. The same thing is true of Taiwan. And I mentioned that in the epilogue, that they've repeatedly said they wanted to destroy Taiwanese civilization. It's an aberration, that it doesn't really exist. And when I just mentioned that in the book, the Chinese publisher gave me an ultimatum: either take that out or we're going to cancel the Chinese translation.
Oh, really?
Which had been and I didn't do it, so they canceled. They were so sensitive about that. One of the strangest people is Turkey. Recep Erdogan, he's told the Athenians they're going to wake up, the capital of Greece, and see a rain of missiles. He's told us that our nuclear weapons at Isilir Air Force Base are not really ours. They've been in Turkey so long, he feels he has proprietary rights. He's threatened to wipe out Tel Aviv. He said he would handle the Armenians the way his grandfathers did, that is the Armenian genocide. And so I went through all those, and it's very funny how we all dismiss them because they are very rare occasions, and the chances that they might happen are not necessarily great, but they do happen, and I think we should take them seriously. And I don't think if you look at us compared to where Carthage was or the Byzantines, there's very similar problems. We're borrowing $1 trillion every 100 days. We're short 40,000 recruits in the military. We have an open border that's not secure. 10 million people have walked across. After Afghanistan's humiliation, the Chinese balloon, Gaza, you get the impression that we've lost all deterrence abroad. I don't think anybody ever thought that we would see the anti-Semitism on campus, sort of like the 30s in Europe. And so, but yet we just say this is just America. This is what makes it great, or this is why we're diverse. And all these platitudes are very similar to what people were saying inside the walls when they were destroyed. Or don't worry, the Romans would never do this. Nobody's ever breached the walls of Carthage, and the Macedonians will come to the rear and help us. And we're Carthaginians. We're the city of Hannibal. Didn't do much good in the 11th hour.
You write about how civilizations have collapsed over time and how they sort of march to the abyss, not necessarily knowing that it's the abyss and that, the next step could be one's last, showing how societies descend into barbarism and obliteration. And I realize like those terms may seem excessive to describe America right now, but on some days, not really. So you and I have talked many times about societal rot, cultural rot, just absolute, it feels like nihilism, what we're doing to ourselves. But what would you say are the top 3 indicators that America's following that path right now?
Well, one of them is that we have destroyed the system of law, equal application of the law. And I mean that in the broadest sense. There is no federal immigration law. It's not that the border is porous. It doesn't exist. And we have 10 million people here. We all know they came in illegally. We all know they're residing illegally. And yet we're subsidizing. And if anybody said, when the medicine is seen as worse than the disease, we're in bad shape. No one will say they need to go back, the 10 million. And we'll do with the other illegal aliens later on, but at least the 10 million. And we don't, if somebody commits a violent act, they're usually in a big city out the same day. It's not that we're lax on crime. There's actual people who believe it's not a crime. So, and then when we look at Trump is going through, or the January 6th versus the May 2020 and June 2020 riders. So I think everybody feels that the law doesn't exist as blind justice, that it's applied through ideological or democratic lenses. And that's one big thing. The other is I don't think they have confidence in the military anymore. Not just that we're so short recruits, but they feel that it's ideologically biased, that it's woke. The working class white males who died at double their numbers in the demographic in Iraq and Afghanistan, we all counted on. We kind of demonized them. Milley and Austin did, and said they were prone to white rage and white supremacy, and they ran an investigation, and they just announced in December they found nothing, but they really turned off that demographic, and they are the ones, that demographic is why we're short 40,000. All the other demographics are joining the military at previous levels, but not that demographic. So that I'm really worried about our military, where we don't have a military production that's necessary to replace artillery, the mundane things, bullets, artillery, drones, javelins. But we're spending all this money with these defense contractors on these $200 million jets. But we need the basics in large numbers, especially if we were to go to war with China. And then I'm worried about the military, and I'm worried about the absence of rule of law. Just finish. It's financial. This debt. We're spending more money to service the debt than we are on the defense budget. That's Neil Ferguson wrote a good article not too long ago, a colleague of mine at Hoover, that for him that was a barometer of modern collapse, when a late 20th century or 21st century state spent more to service the debt than they could spend on their own defense.
Well, that's dark. So
it is dark.
How, as the expert, how would it end? If it's in the process of ending, this experiment of ours, how does the ending take place?
Well, I think you just continue to let people hear from the poorest and illiberal regimes in the world. So we have an all-time record, Megyn. 55 million people were not born in the United States. And that's the highest number, and it's the highest percentage, 15%. And when you're letting in 2 million a year, you're going to see large pockets of areas where people are coming from different places, but they have nothing in common, and the host has no effort or no desire to make them have something in common with other Americans. So we're making enclaves, and we're starting to break up under our federalist system, which is great, but people are all going, I don't mean all people, but from Illinois or Minnesota or New York or California, you're getting over 2 million people a year that are going to so-called red states, low taxes, traditional values, and safe. And, the government is not physically insolvent, et cetera, et cetera. The blue model has failed. So we're starting to divide geographically. And any time you add a geographical force multiplier to cultural differences, and you can really see it. I know when you travel a lot and you go to a Tennessee and you go from Tennessee, from New York City or from just coastal California to Florida, they're like two different worlds. And they're not, it's like the 1850s, it seems to me, when we also had a geographical element to political differences. So I think that's one of the things. Financially, I think historically, when you have that level of debt, you can either inflate the currency, and we're trying to do that to pay back bondholders and debtors with cheap dollars, or we can renounce the debt. People have talked about that, and we're doing that. We're telling people who took student loans, it was about $1.8 trillion, that they don't have to pay. We're giving away billions of dollars, and that's just the way of the government saying that these students have renounced their debt. They wouldn't have forgiven them if the students had made their payments. And then also, you can appropriate capital. That happens in Rome. That happened in Byzantine. And we're starting to talk about that. When I researched the dying citizen, I noticed there's a lot of thought by the left put into things like, we're going to take your 401k, but we're going to give you, for each $100,000, we will give you years of Social Security credit. And so people, you didn't build that attitude. When they say you didn't build that, you can see where they're going. But they have to deal with the $36 trillion in debt somehow, and we're borrowing over $2 trillion a year. And Joe Biden just, we're going to give this to Ukraine, we're going to give this overseas, we're going to do this. And there is a limit to it, despite what modern monetary theory says, that there isn't. There is.
Yeah, it's catching up to us. This discussion is reminding me of my 8th grader who's been preparing for a debate he has to do for school on whether we should abolish the Electoral College. And he's arguing that we should not abandon it. And some others in the class have been assigned to argue the opposite. So he's been researching a lot, and I've been learning a lot myself just about a lot of the reasons behind it and so on. I mean, we all have a working knowledge, but it's been a fascinating exercise. And some of the things that you're pointing out right here are the arguments in favor of keeping it, right? Because if we switch to a system where it's just the popular vote, you're going to have politicians who only campaign in the largest cities and to the coastal elites, and the smaller states and cities and towns are going to be forgotten. And one of the reasons it was instituted to begin with was a worry about cultural differences and preserving them in these 50 state experiments. But if they were going to sign on to a federalism principle where the feds had power over them, they wanted to make sure that they were adequately represented, even though they were small. They didn't have as big a populace. And there was real worry about people in the larger states and the larger cities forcing their worldview on the smaller colonies or states and so on. And the second piece of it was, you said, appropriation. And it's starting to happen more and more. As you say, we'll just start by messing with the 401ks a little. We'll just start by making the trucker pay for these snot-nosed college campus protesters, student loans, just a little here or there. We'll just call it forgiveness. He won't really realize that we're taking his money. And that was the other big thing that they were worried about was that they would have a president backed by, elites in these big cities who would start appropriating land, in particular, in the smaller parts of the United States, and that these folks would effectively be without a voice to object to it if they didn't have the power that they have through the Electoral College, where you have the number of electors of your House representatives plus your 2 senators. Anyway, the whole thing is kind of fascinating. And as you talk about the possible dissembling, it takes me back to what was important to the founders in creating the company and the country to begin with.
They were they were really geniuses. I get so angry when people malign them, because in the case of Electoral College, they also mentioned that they felt that vote fraud would be almost impossible to stop entirely. But one thing about it was there would be so many different states that you wouldn't have a coherent method to throw an entire election. You might have states, but they wouldn't coordinate. But if you had a national election, one party could have a national uniform balloting system, and then they could throw the entire election. But they thought there would be too many players in the Electoral College for one particular ideology to control. But it brings up another moment. The left, in the old days of Bill Clinton, and even before that with Jimmy Carter, when the left had an agenda that didn't appeal to 51% of the people. They tried to, in case of Bill Clinton, he'd say, no, I'm going to have kids wear uniforms, or I'm going to have a sister soldier moment, or I'm going to have police officers, 100,000 police officers. But they don't make that effort. They want to change the system. They want to change the Electoral College once the blue wall fell in 2016. They used to brag about it. They say, well, before the election even starts, we have Illinois, California, New York. They'll never be able to defeat us. And we have Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio. And now that's gone, so they don't like it. But they got rid of half of the 160-year filibuster. They want to get rid of the 9-person, I guess that's 160 years, the 9-person Supreme Court. They want to pack that. They want to bring 2 states in the union to get 4 senators, D.C. and Puerto Rico. So the left is trying to, and there's also a talk when I didn't realize how serious they are, but in the case of the Electoral College, they had this national voter compact where each state legislature votes that their electors will violate the constitutional mandated duty to reflect the in-state popular vote, but they're going to reflect the national vote. And the plan of the National Voter Compact is when you get 270 electoral votes, that is enough states that have that number, then it won't matter that the Electoral College in theory still exists. And I think we're only about 10 electors short. In other words, in this next election, if they get 1 or 2 more states to vote, and say Donald Trump wins those states, to take the example, but Joe Biden squeaks by in the popular vote, those states would then vote for Joe Biden and they could elect him. And so that's a pretty radical thing. The other thing they're trying to do is they look at the Senate and they don't know what the founders and the Federalist Papers said about it. It was created to represent people as residents of particular states. And they wanted to empower states and not just destroy them through the federal government. But you read all of these law articles and you see a lot of people talking about, well, it's not fair. There are 750,000 people that vote uniformly for each congressperson, 435. However, Californians have 20 million people per senator and Wyoming has 250,000. Therefore, we should make the Senate popularly elected. And then you wouldn't have an upper or lower house, or the Senate 30 years versus 25 years to be a senator.
We would never have formed a country. We would never have formed the United States of America if that were the deal.
No, it would just be a popular mass Athenian-like mobocracy. And that's what they want. They really do. And so
because we hear it every 4 years since Trump won the Electoral College in 2016, but not the popular vote. Especially more and more the Democrats want to get rid of the Electoral College because they think they can run the numbers with large pockets of votes in New York and California. And they will, I'm sure a lot of Democrats don't vote in California and New York because they know they got it locked up. It's like, what's the point? I'm sure a lot of Republicans don't either, for that matter, because they know the other side has it locked up. But if it were a national popular vote, you can bet they'd be getting every citizen in Los Angeles, in Oakland and beyond to get to those polls, so they'd have a lot more power and they probably would vote. And this is one of the reasons why Republicans don't want it. But you hear it more and more and more out of left-wing think tanks. And now we'll see what happens in this election. But guarantee if Trump wins again by winning the Electoral College, but not the popular vote, there's going to be another push. And so we're really having debates about the foundation of the country, which is one of the reasons why I asked you, how does it end? And I do think the push to get rid of that would be one of the key things for the reasons you're outlining in your book. These are the erosions that happen in otherwise strong societies as they began to fall. And, getting rid of the Electoral College is not what it's all about, but it's just saying that the things that it was formed to protect are eroding at rapid pace right now. And that might be a final death knell. It's one of the reasons why we have to pay attention. Some of these principles, again, outlined in Victor's latest book, The End of Everything, how wars descend into annihilation. And right now, Victor, domestically, we're not at war, actual war, but we certainly have profound and important cultural, financial, military, rhetorical wars that we're fighting all the time.
Yeah, I don't think people realize we've never done this before. We have never impeached a president twice. We have never tried a president as a private citizen in the Senate once he left office. We have never had states try to remove the leading presidential candidate off the ballot. We've never put the leading presidential candidate in an election year from one party and allowed local and state prosecutors to go after them. And all of it is predicated that the right wouldn't do the same thing. In other words, you wouldn't have a Utah prosecutor who say, somebody mailed in illegal money to the Biden campaign from Salt Lake, therefore I'm going to indict the people in the Biden campaign here in Salt Lake. Or, once the Republicans got the House, they decided not to impeach Biden in the way they had Trump. Or we haven't seen states take Biden off the ballot. But there's a big discussion among conservatives is that if the left keeps changing the system and trying to do things we've never seen before, and you keep telling them not to do that, because it'll come around to them, at what point do you have to do something? And then if you have to do something in like manner, then are you just tick for tat eroding into third world, oblivion? And that's what I think that's the problem that Republicans have. They say to the Democrats, stop talking about packing the court. Don't allow people to go to Supreme Court justices' homes and threaten them. Schumer, don't go to the Supreme Court and scream and yell. People on the right did criticize January 6th, but they're saying don't take people off the ballot or we're going to have to do that. Or don't impeach presidents twice or we're going to have to do that. Don't try to get rid of the filibuster because you're in the majority now. And maybe we should try to get it. But would you like to lose it now that you're in the majority? And so would you want a special counsel going after the Biden family as soon as he leaves office? Because the Hunter and Jim Biden, Frank Biden, they've all got criminal exposure, much more than Donald Trump. And do they really want it to create that system? And they all think, I guess they think, well, we're so morally superior and intellectually keener than the right, the Neanderthal right, we get the special exemption. That's who we are. And they don't. They're clingers or they're irredeemables, and they wouldn't dare do what we're doing. And that's why they're so afraid, Megyn. If you read lately, when they look at these polls, there's all these articles now that come out about Donald Trump's going to be a dictator. They take, his joke about being a dictator for a day. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Even though he's been there for 4 years and did nothing of it and did nothing of what they did, but they project on what they would do. They say to themselves, well, we know what we did to Trump. And if they had done that to us and we took power, I know what I would do. And therefore, he must think like we do. So he's going to go back and get us the way we would get him if they had done this to us and we had won the election. And that's what's happening right now.
Meanwhile, if you look at our, foundational principles, we wanted a very small executive. We did not want another king. That's why he's down there in Article 2. He's not up there in Article 1. And they've grown and grown and grown the presidency. I mean, both sides have done this. I remember, the unitary executive theory under Bush. But these days, it's the Democrats were lecturing us about Trump wanting to be a dictator as Joe Biden takes out his magic wand and transfers trillions of dollars in debt, as you point out, from the working class, or, the debt from the rich to the working class without anybody's permission, takes out his magic wand, completely revises Title IX, redefining what a woman is, young women's rights, due process rights for young men at the point in life where their entire future could be determined. You get expelled from a college for being an alleged rapist, but it turns out your alleged rape victim was just a woman who consented to the interlude but had Sunday morning regrets. That's a life changer. That's not a year changer. It's a life changer. And with his magic wand, he took away men's due process rights. So the executive right now is growing, and he's at very large levels of power. Joe Biden is, with his pen and his phone that he got from Barack Obama. And under those circumstances, we need more checks and balances than ever. We need the Senate to have robust powers like filibusters. We need the Electoral College. We need something to stop just the rampage of majority rule, because it will lead to the breakup of the union.
Yeah, and we've got these 20,000 political appointments. You know, the Heritage Foundation is trying to think of how to vet 20,000 people that Trump, if he were to win coming this time, he wouldn't be startled deer in the headlights, but they would have a whole team. But the sheer magnitude, 20,000 in the executive branch. And then you think about all the abuses about the DOJ, Bruce Orr and the Steele dossier. He was a lifetime member. And then you think of the FBI working with Twitter to censor the laptop disinformation. And then you think, wow, John Brennan was the CIA director. He lied 2 times under oath. Nothing happened to him. Andrew McCabe was the FBI director. He lied 4 times, perjury. Nothing happened. James Clapper not only lied, but he said, I gave the least untruthful answer I could think of. So it's almost like these people are judge, jury, and executioner. When they want to go after you, the private citizen, they can cite you or fine you or say you've violated a law, and internally, administratively, they can refuse your appeal. Then they can level the fine, and your only recourse is to go to court, where they have 1 million times more resources than you do. That was never intended to create these bureaus like the EPA, for example. We have people out here in this farming area, Megyn, that there's an Inland Water Act that people passed in the legislature, the state, the Senate, and the House years ago to make sure that canals and rivers were clean and that there wasn't runoff. But now the EPA thinks, wow, we could extend that theoretically to a low spot on a guy's farm. So when it rained and it drained off for about 3 or 4 days before it dried up, we could run out there and test it, see if there's too much nitrogen, and then fine him. And they're doing that all the time. It's like the raisin administrative commit. There's I know you won't believe this, but it's a former raisin grower. You don't own your raisins; the government does. So if you pick your raisins, your grapes, you put them on the ground, you dry them, and you say, you know what? I don't like the price. I'm going to stack them up in my barnyard, and I'm going to have them washed and stemmed on my own little machine. You can't. They will fine you and put you in jail if you do that. Mm-hmm. Because the government comes in and says, we own those, and we're going to determine how many can go on the market and how many either have to be fed to cattle or sold overseas to keep the price high. And that was never intended. And all of that stuff we're seeing it in the left now, because the press is a watchdog for the right, and the press would never allow the right to do that, but there is no press for the left. And so they're hand in glove with the left, and they empower the left, because the people who are doing this think, you know what? The Atlantic magazine, the Washington Post, or NPR, they're always going to be receptive for a phone call or to contextualize what we do. So I don't really have to worry I'm going to get caught. And it's
so interesting. I feel like what's great about all of your books, and this one too, again, it's called The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation by Victor Davis Hanson, is I feel like on this show, we take large news stories and we try to condense them into small digestible bits that people can manage in their day-to-day news consumption. And you do a great job of the opposite, taking what we're seeing in the country and expanding it beyond. Like, what does it mean? Where's it going next? What's the historical context for what we're seeing, which is an important piece of understanding the stakes of these everyday news items that we kick around. I mean, you mentioned the Trump indictments and the 4 criminal trials against him. And I kicked off the show with a threat by this judge that he could put the former president of the United States in jail any day now. And he says if Trump violates his clearly unconstitutional gag order, I mean, I just think the gag order it's not going to withstand judicial scrutiny. But if Trump violates it again, he's going to put, if you believe the polls, the likely next president, and even this judge acknowledged you might be the next president, into jail. And there Trump will sit, Victor, day after day, however long the judge says he has to sit there, not going to his trial, not campaigning, as a jailbird. Now he's, I guess, I don't know what you call him, a jailbird, as he's facing possible prison time for these other cases, this case on the merits.
I don't know why he didn't. Why didn't he put a gag order on Michael Cohen going on TikTok trying to raise money
He just
and
threatens.
commenting on them. He
No,
just threatens.
he says,
How
if
about
Michael
Joe
Cohen
Biden?
keeps talking, I might have to expand the gag order. I might have to. Well, no time like the present.
How about Joe Biden said at the White House dinner, he laughed and said stormy weather. That was the president of the United States editorializing on an ongoing criminal case. And so, that's a hard call for Donald Trump, what to do. Do you just keep talking and protect your First Amendment rights, and then you're gagged and put in jail? And what's the shelf life on that? I think the first response would be immediate sympathy, and that would show up in the polls, how outrageous it was. But I think the left thinks, well, you get your little bit of sensationalism, but we're playing the long game, and we're going to do this, all of May, all of June, all of July, all of August. We're going to bankrupt him. We're going to keep him off the campaign trail. He's going to get frustrated. He's going to say crazier and crazier things. And you're going to finally say, make it all go away. I don't want to vote for somebody in jail. That's just not going to reflect. I don't care how it happened. I know it's unfair, but it's going on too long. That's their theory. And they may be right about it.
Let's spend a minute on the Trump trial, because we have been watching it and we've been consuming the media coverage around it, because that's part of our job here. I have got to show you this bit. I apologize for showing you this bit, Victor, but I must. So this is Lawrence O'Donnell, who hosts a primetime show on MSNBC, who apparently attended the Trump trial last Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday and Friday, whatever, and was absolutely gleeful about the fact that Trump looked at him, that Trump made eye contact with him on day one. So this was his Thursday evening monologue in part, and just consume it. Take a listen. It's at 12.
At 4:26 p.m. today, Maggie Haberman posted this to the New York Times live update of the Trump trial. Trump left the courtroom squinting strangely at Lawrence O'Donnell, the MSNBC host, as he did. And visually, there was just nothing between Donald Trump and me in that row. And I have my interpretation of what Donald Trump's face and eyes were trying to say to me, and what drove him to create a final moment in the courtroom today that was worthy of New York Times reporting. Boris Epstein was sitting right in front of me and knew I was there. He should have told Donald Trump, when you walk by O'Donnell, don't give him the satisfaction of making a moment about him. But defendants like Donald Trump always make mistakes in courtrooms. And mistakes are what has landed Donald Trump in criminal courtrooms.
Oh my God. All right, just stand by. Here's part two, okay? The next day, he returned to court. And here's part of the monologue from Friday night.
I guess because Donald Trump does apparently whatever I tell him to do. He did not glare at me again. I said right here on the program last night that it was a mistake for him to do that. He shouldn't have done that in such a goofy and public way that Maggie Haberman at the New York Times felt compelled to report it right away. No one in the courtroom had seen Donald Trump do anything like that. Today, even though I was sitting in an even more prominent position, he did everything he could possibly do to not look at me within his peripheral vision, because whenever his peripheral vision got close, he immediately twisted it away in the other direction. He just wasn't going to give me that gift again. He made such an effort yesterday to look at me that today's effort, looking at me, was just as obvious. I don't think he was afraid. I think he just got good advice right here at 10 p.m. last night.
Oh my God, Victor. The hubris that Donald Trump is sitting there thinking for 10 seconds or two about Lawrence O'Donnell.
Donald Trump is looking around, and if he did notice him, he said, "Who in the hell is that guy? I have no idea who he is." And he knows that. I mean, he has a very small audience. Nobody knows who he is, and yet he tries to quantify the precise time at this time and 10 o'clock. as if and then when he quotes the New York Times, a reporter, everybody knows what the record of the New York Times has been, especially in relation to Donald Trump. They were the ones that told us that the Steele dossier was Russian collusion, that the laptop was Russian disinformation. They told us about the bank ping. They're notorious for lying on any context that has to do with Donald Trump. They despise him, and they want Joe Biden to be elected. So Donald Trump doesn't even know who the guy is. And yet it's really, Nicole Wallace was kind of the same way. She said, if Trump is elected, people like me won't be on the air. No, they don't care about you. You people they're such narcissists. They think they're so important because they're actually left wing and on television. Who cares? Nobody cares. And I don't think Donald
amazing.
Trump,
if
his life depended on it, he wouldn't know who he was.
He would
so
not
excited
know who Lawrence was. To see his name, Lawrence O'Donnell, in the New York Times. They wrote about me. For the listening audience, he spotlighted his own face in the Trump courthouse audience, way the hell behind Donald Trump. Like, I was there. I swear, he was looking at me. I matter. This is what's so pathetic about the modern day press corps. That's to a T. They make it all about themselves. And then another clip in that same monologue, one of those nights, he said that he's sure Donald Trump is watching the Lawrence O'Donnell show. He's been known to watch it, and then he's watching. Okay, that's not happening.
No one's watching that show.
No. Maybe Maggie Haberman in the New York Times. So then substantively what happened last week was Hope Hicks took the stand, longtime campaign PR person and representative of Donald Trump when he was running and when he was in the White House. And she gave testimony. She was, compelled to give testimony by the prosecution. And she said that she does recall Trump acknowledging that Cohen had made this hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. So that's something that the prosecution's trying to prove, that Trump knew about it. My own take is it doesn't matter, but the defense is, I guess, going to argue this. But then she also said she thinks the reason that Trump was worried about these women coming forward was, the campaign a little, but much more so Melania. He cares very much what Melania thinks. The defense is going to say, see, the payments had a dual purpose and therefore they weren't a campaign expenditure. The real argument should be, it doesn't matter what was in Trump's head. The only thing that matters is what the nature of the payment is. Is the nature of the payment such that it can only ever be a campaign expense like a polling fee? Or is the nature of the payment something that could possibly be something other than a campaign expenditure? And this particular payment falls into category 2, which means it's not a campaign finance violation. Anyway, they're proceeding with this myth that we have to get into the purpose and Donald Trump's motivation. Both sides are proceeding with it because of the judge's rulings. And Hope Hicks talked about how he was worried about Melania. Well, the left-wing freak out over the fact that when Hope Hicks ended her campaign or her direct exam with the prosecution, and the defense lawyer stood up and started asking her some biographical background, like how long did you work for the Trump organization? She cried. She broke down for a moment in tears and they took a short break. Now, I don't know why Hope Hicks cried, but I imagine it's very stressful to get up there and testify against your former boss, the president of the United States, and you don't want to be there. You've been forced by a prosecutor you probably believe is unfair, and you don't want to be in the spotlight like this. She never gives interviews. She doesn't go on TV. This is not somebody who wants the spotlight. I'm sure it was stressful. Whatever. Here's some of the armchair analysis we got. Take a listen to earlier on MSNBC, Ari Melber and his take.
She said she was nervous today from the stand. She answered the questions, confirming she's under subpoena, she's paying for her own lawyer. And in a moment that does matter for a jury, this is still a human exercise, Hope Hicks broke down crying on the stand at one point. It was apparently, best we can tell, and from the reporters in the room and the wider context we have, a genuine display of emotion for her as she felt the weight of this moment, the raw pressure of testifying about her longtime boss, and maybe the details were tough for her to share in this manner.
Now he goes on from there to discuss on his show about how, bringing up that time of like when she was working for Trump, it was just so emotional for her. The better days, the good old days. Like, how the hell does anybody know They tried to turn it into Andrew Weissman was up there. It was the exclamation point. It was the icing on the cake, her raw emotion. It was like, okay, calm down. Testifying is a stressful situation. Everyone wanted to use it for their own purposes against her. And the final comment on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, which I watched so you don't have to, was, I don't care why she cried. I don't care. What did she cry on January 6th? Did she cry for the immigrants and the families who were separated by Donald Trump during his administration? I don't care why she cried if she didn't cry for them.
Yeah, she could have just as easily cried in the fact that she liked Donald Trump and she was subpoenaed to testify by an attorney who was going to try to warp and change and extract any type of meaning that would be unfavorable to Donald Trump. And she knew she was in that position where she had to testify, and she was trying to tell the truth, and she saw the truth, and she understood that everything she said would be used against someone whom she didn't feel had done anything wrong, and she didn't want to come forward because he hadn't done anything wrong. That's kind of a stressful situation. But, we get back to the equal application of law. Hillary Clinton hired the DNC to pay the Perkins Coie law firm, to pay Fusion GPS, to pay Christopher Steele, who was a British subject, a foreign national who was forbidden by statute to work for a presidential campaign, to collect a false dossier and seed it. And then she wrote that whole thing off, not as a campaign expense, but as a legal expense. And the federal commission overseeing elections fined her over $100,000. But they could have easily said it was a criminal statute like Alvin Bragg. But if Donald Trump had said that he said that it was a campaign, they're arguing he said it was a legal expense when he should have said it was a campaign. If he had said it was a campaign, they would have prosecuted him and said, no, it wasn't. It was a legal expense to hush it. It was just, they know what they're doing. And, this thing is like the E. Jean Carroll case. They passed a special bill in the legislature to waive the statute of limitations. So she had 1 year to file. Otherwise, it was way past the statute of limitation. They had to gin up these misdemeanors to a felony federal offense, what the federal attorneys didn't think was worth pursuing because it wasn't really a federal offense. And therefore, they got around the statute of limitations. And then even that wasn't enough. By energizing it into a felony, they had to call on COVID and say, well, COVID gives an extra year. So all of these things would never have been leveled, not just against the Democrat. They would have never been leveled against Donald Trump. He would have never been indicted if he had just said, I'm tired, I'm not going to run again. They wouldn't have indicted him. They know that. It's all about politics. Yeah, it is. And they know it.
Well, and then you listen to, again, back to Lawrence O'Donnell, his biggest complaint against Hope Hicks, again, was that she didn't quit earlier. But he goes on to point out, she didn't need either of these jobs. She was born rich in Connecticut. She could have tried to do something more worthy with her life. And he says, we have a monster in the presidency, not because of Donald Trump, but because of people who voted for Donald Trump and some of the people who worked for his campaign.
What is Lawrence O'Donnell saying then, that when all of the Republicans for the last 50 years have tried to get Hispanics and black voters and poor white voters, and John McCain couldn't do it, Bob Dole couldn't do it, George H.W. Bush couldn't do it, George W. did a little bit but couldn't really do it, John McCain couldn't do it, Mitt Romney couldn't. So this supposedly monstrous person says, we, us, our farmers, I love Latinos, I want to help people, I'm going to prevent Chinese. Whatever you think of him, he created a nationalist populist movement within this so-called caricatured aristocratic party. And he's taken the entire white working class away from the Democrats. They don't have any of them. And he's now appealing to about 20% of the black constituency, African Americans, and he may be almost even with Latinos. So how is that possible in the mind of Lawrence O'Donnell? How could that be if he's appealing to poor people and middle class people, while Lawrence O'Donnell's party, if you look at who votes Democratic, there are two constituencies. There are people in the higher zip codes, and the donor class is the billionaire class of the Democrats. and they're the very subsidized poor. But the middle classes are going for a guy that he thinks is a monster, but he won't tell us why they're voting for this monster. And he knows why.
So true.
Because he's an elitist, and he's alienated people with these elite issues like an open border and transgenderism and banning gasoline, all of that crazy stuff. Well beyond Afghanistan and the locks of deterrence and the inflation and printing money at $1 trillion every 3 months. So he knows that.
He wants us to believe he's horrified by the fact that she was, quote, born rich, even though I'm sure he's got kids. They were born rich. He's rich. His party is no longer the party of the working class at all. They are the party of the rich. And yet he wants to save a little special disdain for Hope Hicks because she was born rich and worked for a monster. Stand by, VDH. Got to take a quick break. Check out his book while we go to break too, The End of Everything. Ahead, Kristi Noem, Fani Willis back in the news, and college craziness. As we draw near another critical election, it's not just about casting your vote. It's also about elevating your voice. I want to tell you about the Association of Mature American Citizens, or AMAC. It's more than just a senior discount org. They unite like-minded patriots committed to preserving our cherished values and actively opposing the leftist agenda. As AMAC's membership grows, Washington listens. Every new member strengthens this movement. So if you love America, check out amac.us/Megyn, MEGYN, and consider becoming a 4-year member for just $30. AMAC membership gives you access to the AMAC magazine, free Social Security and Medicare guidance, money-saving discounts, trusted news, sweepstakes, and more. Take advantage of their election year sale, 4 years for just $30. By joining the over 2 million members, get your voice heard. Join now at amac.us/Megyn. That's amac.us/MEGYN. So, Victor, as we're on the topic of Trump trials, guess who spoke out this weekend for the first time? Nathan Wade. In an interesting move, because he had apparently agreed to sit down with Kristen Welker of NBC. He bailed on her and embarrassed NBC and showed up a couple of 6 weeks later on ABC, where he sat and was asked precisely 0 difficult questions. I mean, 0. I will give you one exchange that I thought was of particular note to me in particular. Here it is, Deb. Run that soundbite we just talked about.
So you didn't realize when you took the case, your life was really going to be under a microscope.
I did not realize that my life would be in danger. The microscope, I don't have a problem with. The truth is, if the worst that you could find was the fact that I had a relationship with someone, or that I happen to be going through a divorce, that's okay. That's okay. I have nothing to hide.
Now, a responsible journalist would follow up with, well, that wasn't the worst that we found. What we actually found was that you perjured yourself, both in your divorce case and in this case, where the judge found you told a story that smacked with the odor of mendacity, where he was obviously deeply distressed at your ethical choices. And by the way, why did you do that? Why did you say under oath in your divorce proceedings that you were not having an extramarital affair when you clearly were? What, was that not an inappropriate ethical lapse? Why did you testify in your affidavit that she always paid cash for everything when that seems to be patently untrue? Why, sir, did you go over to her house from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. and then try to tell the court that it was because there was a Porsche dealership nearby? Those are some things that you might feel some shame about, not just your extramarital affair, which you claim began while you were separated, but you were still with your wife when it was underway. So those are some of the things an interested reporter, somebody who's open-minded to actual facts, Victor, might have asked of Nathan Wade. Didn't happen.
Yeah, I would have asked him what in your background made you qualified to prosecute the most important case probably in the United States at the time, when you've never tried a felony or criminal case in your life. What recommended you to Fani Willis? It wasn't your judicial experience. And what did you talk to when you went to the White House? And why did you bill the Georgia District Attorney's Office for 24 straight hours of legal service. And I think you billed them, and correct me, you should ask them if that's wrong, that you billed the time you were in the White House soliciting apparently counsel from the White House counsel's office. So there, it's that whole, I think that particular gambit won't work. I think it's too far gone now, tainted. And at some point, they're going to have to shut it down because of both of them in that record. And maybe
he
if it ever
disagrees
had
with
to
you.
change of
He disagrees with you entirely. She asked him about criticism from the left, of course, like the Washington Post, that this was reckless, that they imperiled a very important case. And that's why the left is mad at Nathan Wade. Here's what he said. It's SOT 20.
Do you think that you've done any kind of damage to this case?
None at all.
Even the public perception of it?
There again, this takes me back to the initial statement that I made. My private life became the focal point of the case. And my private life has nothing to do with the merits of that prosecution.
Quick follow-up, SOT 19. Take a listen.
Workplace romances are as American as apple pie. It happens to everyone.
Oh, apple pie.
But it happened to the two of us.
Do you regret
that thing? I regret that private matter became the focal point of this very important prosecution. This is a very important case. I hate that my personal life has begun to overshadow the true issues in the case.
It's unbelievable how, why this became an issue is not because you happened to find love while prosecuting Trump. It's the fact that you were hired by your boss. Fani Willis is the person who was in charge ultimately of bringing you in, of your paychecks, which she just rubber stamped when she was in the office. She paid you more than she paid the other two special prosecutors who were brought in, despite, as Victor points out, you not having the same qualifications to try a massive RICO case against a former president of the United States. And then you took her all over the world on the taxpayer's dollar, thus creating an incentive for the two of you to keep the case going, to indict the case, because the romance was happening before the indictment came down, and then to keep the case going, none of which was pressed in the interview by someone who was supposed to be a member of the press corps.
Yeah, and I mean, the basic question is, he knows that when he said it was all about his personal life, is that in any courtroom, if a member of the prosecuting attorney's legal staff lies under oath pertinent to the case, and he did when he denied that relationship, then how can they, with any credibility, press a case and have the defendant expect to be telling the truth and put the defendant on her oath when their own staff is lying under oath? So the case should have been dismissed, and I think no other county that was removed would ever try him, and they know that. So I think all of these things, I think the left knows that they're all going to eventually be thrown out on appeal, maybe at the federal level or maybe at the Supreme Court, but they don't care because they feel they're doing damage right now. And all they want is Trump tied up, money going out of his campaign, his pocket, getting him angry, psychologically, physically wearing him down. And then if we learn after the election that they were all fraudulent and just a joke, they'll think that's, it's kind of like Harry Reid when he lied about Mitt Romney's not paying his taxes. He said it worked, didn't it?
To me, Victor, it's infuriating because to watch a member of the press completely fall down on the job and not ask any difficult questions of the guy, it makes my skin crawl. She should have gone in there with his interrogatory, and she should have said, "You lied under oath. This is a sworn document. You're an officer of the court. You lied when asked for any receipts or any documents whatsoever that might show any travel with a woman other than your wife during a set period of dates. Didn't have to be while you were happily married. It was any time prior to the divorce. That would have included periods of separation. In fact, they were specific on that. Because his excuse on the stand was, well, we were separated. That it included specifically while you were separated. You were required to say what you had done during that period too, with a woman other than your wife. You lied and you said there were none, that no expenses had been paid, that no trips had been taken, that there was no time between you and a woman, not your wife. That's what you said under oath. And only when that became an issue in this second proceeding that you have against Trump did you go back to your sworn interrogatory answers and change your answer, to quote, amend your answer to assert the Fifth Amendment privilege, which is against self-incrimination. But when asked about it on the stand, you tried to say, oh, that's not the privilege I was trying to raise. I was trying to raise a privacy privilege, which is made up, sir. Why did you do that? Didn't you violate your duty of candor to the court and to your constituency? It's not that hard. Use your brain. Do some research. I just wrote it for you. If anybody else gets a shot at Nathan Wade, do it. If you have any it's so infuriating. This is why we never make progress. People like this get away with it.
Why didn't the judge, though, throw it out? Everybody said he was sober and judicious, and he was a model of, it was spineless. And the same thing with Jean Carroll. She said that she couldn't remember if it was 94, 95, or 96, but she did remember it happened because she had a designer dress, which we now know didn't exist at the time of her accusation. So all the judges in all of these cases, it's really, my mother was she was the second female appellate court judge in California, and almost the first. At the same time, two women were appointed Fresno County Superior Court. And so I grew up, she had judges. She had them socially over, and we had an enormous respect for judges. And I've lost that respect watching this circus now, because all of these judges, the judge in the Carroll case, the judge in the Latita James case, Ingoron, hamming it up to the cameras, this judge, they're all political. And it's not even a trial, it's a circus. And I think, I wish Donald Trump would find a strategy that he could show that it's a circus without tweeting and getting himself in jail, but I'm not sure he can. I don't know what else you're supposed to do except sit there and watch the circus proceed. And you can't do that if you're running for president.
Well, something interesting is happening to not a Donald Trump prosecutor, but one of these woke left-wing prosecutors who's tried to make her mission in office more about letting people out of jail and putting cops into it than finding actual bad guys. And that's Marilyn Mosby. Now, she was the prosecutor in Baltimore during the whole Freddie Gray situation, who, for the listening audience, if you're not aware, this is a black man who was killed in his so-called allegedly rough ride by cops who they claimed cops intentionally killed the guy by giving him a rough ride in the back of one of those police vans where he got knocked around and broke his spine and died. And the cops were all acquitted or had hung juries, all of them. And she was the woman behind the prosecution. She was the one stirring up anger. She allowed the cops to get pelted with bottles and rocks while they were trying to keep the streets of Baltimore safe. She fanned the fires of rage and outrage in the wake of Freddie Gray's death, as opposed to just calming things down and saying, let's wait, till all the facts play out, which did not back the story that the cops did anything wrong. Instead, she tried to be like one of these college professors on the Columbia campus, Victor, and make herself part of the drama. I too hate the cops. I too think this is my moment. And we have a little bit of that from back in the day. I think it was 15 when the Freddie Gray situation happened in Baltimore. Here's the throwback to the past.
To the youth of this city, I will seek justice on your behalf. This is a moment. This is your moment. And as young people, our time is now.
Yeah, 2015. This is our moment, and our time is now. Well, you know what happened to Marilyn Mosby? She got convicted, not once but twice, 2 guilty verdicts in 2 separate trials, 2 counts of perjury, and a single count of mortgage fraud. Why? Because during COVID, she decided it might be a really nice time to get a property in Florida. And she lied, says the court and the jury, to say that she had suffered an adverse financial consequence during the COVID pandemic shutdown which allowed her to withdraw $90,000 from her retirement account, thanks to a provision in the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act. And it was a lie. It wasn't true. She was making bank back then. She was having no financial problems as a result of COVID. She had gotten her full salary, which was $248,000 a year. She was doing just fine. She just wanted property in Florida. And she bought not one, but 2 vacation homes there at the time. One withdrawal was for $40,000. The other was for $50,000. And she got her 2 vacation homes. Well, you're not allowed to do that. That's illegal. So she got tried, and then she got tried for perjury. And she was convicted. Well, guess what? This is the pièce de résistance in the story. Now there's an online petition to pardon her, asking Biden to pardon. And guess who's behind it? Andrew Gillum, the disgraced guy who ran for governor against Ron DeSantis.
I remember him.
Tiffany Cross, she was too racist even for MSNBC, the fired racist MSNBC ex-host, and Angela Rye, who is from CNN and has made her podcast with these other 2 all about race and how bad America is. And they're not the only ones pushing for a pardon. Ms. Mosby went on Joy Reid's show playing the victim and saying, Victor, if they can do this to Marilyn Mosby, they can do this to anyone. Take a listen.
I've done absolutely nothing wrong, nothing illegal, nothing criminal.
I know there's a petition asking President Biden to pardon you. Is that what you want?
I mean, I think that that's appropriate. I mean, I think I don't believe that. I know that I've done absolutely nothing wrong, nothing criminal. I want this justice system that I fought so hard to equalize and to balance the scales of justice, where the business model is based off the backs of Black and brown people, for the people that I fought for to understand and recognize that I need them to fight for me. They can do this to Marilyn Mosby, who had the audacity to challenge the status quo. They can do this to anybody.
And I'll give you one little additional detail, and then I'll give you the floor. The highlights from the petition to get her a pardon from those 3 in their podcast, and getting all sorts of signatures now in support of a pardon for her. They allege that she should be pardoned because this Department of Justice is trying to make an example of Marilyn Mosby. Because, quote, we all know the system wants to send a clear message to young lawyers and progressive prosecutors like Aramis Ayala, Kim Fox, Kim Gardner, and countless others, that there are consequences for attempting to balance the scales of justice. So Biden's DOJ, under this theory, is trying to target the Marilyn Mosbys and Kim Foxes of the world because they're trying to balance the scales of justice. Got it?
Yeah, I think I do. I think we're not supposed to talk about race, but all of these people, as Fani Willis did, went to a church, they talk about race nonstop. And it's all predicated. And remember the Jussie Smollett, was that Kim Fox in Chicago?
That was Kim Fox. And she let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's a record that all of these prosecutors, Letitia James campaigned on getting Donald Trump, so did Fani Willis, so did Alvin Bragg. So, and then when they get into trouble, they either campaign about race or they go to a Black church, and then everybody's supposed to say, we're not going to mention race. But since they bring it up, there's something wrong with a particular profile of young Black women who are prosecutors who are injecting race. And Jussie Smollett, Kim Fox was communicating with the staff of Michelle Obama, as I remember, and they're prejudicing their cases in a racial fashion. And it brings up a larger question. It's not all about race, because we have George Gascon in Los Angeles. We had Chesy Boudin in San Francisco. There's a lot of white Latino prosecutors, but it really brings up the question of what these law schools are doing. They're training people in critical race theory, critical legal theory, this Jacobin ideology that the law is fluid, and then if you are left wing or you're progressive or you're DEI, then you deserve exemptions. And any time, in history or any culture, when you take a particular group, tribal group, defined by their religion or their ethnic background or their race or their gender, and you say to them, you're protected because of whatever reason, past history or recompense that we need to pay you back or reparatory action, whatever the reason is, then there's no deterrence. And so all of these prosecutors find themselves in legal problems or ethical problems. And the subtext is they all believe that no one is going to hold them accountable because they will go play the race card. And, you know, I'm not saying that a white conservative prosecutor is any more intelligent, any more moral, any more ethical, but there's less likelihood that they will find that they're exempt. In other words, they know that if they do something wrong, they will be held more accountable. And it's so ironic because what we're watching is the flip side of the Jim Crow South, where in the 1930s and 40s and 50s, if you were a white prosecutor and you were dealing with any matter in your jurisdiction, especially with African American, you could do almost anything and get an exemption, especially if you misused the court or you lied, if it was a matter of race. And here we are now, have just completely gone 360 and are using the same paradigm, but mirror imaging. And we're telling these African American prosecutors that we're not going to hold you accountable for ethical behavior. And you can play the race card whenever you're an extremist, and we don't dare mention it. And, you know, and that's what empowers them. They feel, as she did, she didn't say once on that interview, Joy, here's the case. Here's the 2 condos I bought. Here was the money I got. Here's where I got the money. And here's where I was losing money. So I was eligible for this government benefit. Just like Nathan Wade said, this is the charge against me. I perjured myself, but I want to explain to you why I didn't perjure myself. And here's the evidence. They never do that. They never do that. And
I mean, I would give anything to sit across from Nathan Wade and say, can I see your texts with Fani Willis from 2021? Can you show me your phone right now? Like, you weren't expecting this. Would you mind pulling them up right now? And let's go to 2021. Let's see. Let's see whether there were any loving texts. Just, you know, show it to me if there was nothing. Of course, he never would. And no interviewer would ever do such a thing. It's just so infuriating. And God only knows. I mean, I just don't see, if Biden pardons this woman, there's just no way he can do that. And
I think he might well, because I think
she got caught red-handed.
I know, but he's losing. Because he has lost so many of these constituencies, the white Democratic lunch bucket, old middle class, working class. It's to such a degree, and he's bleeding with both Asians and Latinos. He's going to have to do something with the Black community, and look what he's done already. To the Ukrainians, he said, "Do not attack Russian oil refineries, because we want the price of gas to be low during the election." To students, he said, "We're going to give you this and this and this, so that you'll vote for us." And he's pandering to each one of these constituencies. And he doesn't look at us as Americans. He looks at us as each little mosaic and kind of each little tessera is a piece of my mosaic. And I'm going to deal with these guys and these guys and these guys, Title IX for this group, transgendered for this, cheaper gas for the commuters, my students I'm going to pander to by forgiving loans, and the Palestinians and radical Islam, I'm going to be on the one hand, on the other, anti-Semitic, but Islamophobic, even though there's no evidence that it really exists on campuses. And that's how he looks at politics. And I think he will seriously consider whether to, it only depends on what the Black community in politics sees as an important issue. If they go to him and say, she's very popular, this would be a good token, then he'd do it. If they go and say to her, well, she's kind of crazy, don't worry about it, he won't. But it's not going to be based on the facts or the morality. It's going to be based on sheer political utility.
We kick this off by discussing people like Mosby, who want to make herself part of the story, like she did after Freddie Gray. And that's gone on for a while now, including after Ferguson, which was right around the time of Freddie Gray and Michael Brown. I remember covering this on Fox, and I believe it was Columbia law where the students asked to not have to take their finals because they could not function in the face of such extreme emotional distress. Do you have any idea what lawyers do? Any clue whatsoever? Well, they're at it again. Columbia students right now, law students, pushing to cancel all exams. Student editors at the Columbia Law Review are urging the law school to cancel tests or at least make all courses pass-fail. Highlights from their statement. We urge the law school to cancel exams and give all students passing grades. The violence we witnessed last night has irrevocably shaken many of us, left us and many of our peers unable to focus and highly emotional during this tumultuous time. I've got news for you. The law is not for you. Pick a different profession. You know, maybe like gardening. It can be mildly frustrating, but in general, stress-free. You should not be lawyers. If you cannot function or focus because you're too highly emotional after like some protests, you're going to be dealing with murderers and child molesters if you do criminal law, fraudsters who have completely bankrupted people if you go into the more white collar. If you want to do civil litigation like I did, you could be talking about people who are dead in a product's liability case. You could be talking about 30,000 people losing their job if you fail to argue this motion successfully. If you cannot function because you're a little stressed out, you're going to be a shitty lawyer. Find a different job. It's not about canceling your exam. They go on to say, this follows the growing distress that many of us have felt for months. Our students are not well. On that, I agree with them. Victor, this is so pathetic.
Yeah, one thing that I don't like it, but we have got moral clarity about all these demonstrations. They've just blown up a lot of the left's charades. We've known, anybody who's been at a so-called elite campus has known for years that they're mediocre. At Stanford, where I work, they let in only 20% of the student body is so-called white. That's not important, but it is important that they threw out the SAT and they don't rate comparative GPAs to achieve that. And so they are letting in students who, by their own definition, cannot do the work that they themselves used to require because they were in competition with other universities and said, we're preeminent. Now, what are they doing? They're giving 60 to 80% A's at all these campuses. They're watering down the courses at half the workload, or they're introducing new courses. And then they're creating these helicopter privileged, helicopter parented students, and everybody's watching this. And they're thinking, wow, these kids tore up the Portland State Library. They were like animals. They destroyed it. Wow, did you see what they did at USC and UCLA? They made a mess. It's worse than a homeless camp. And then you know who has to clean it up? All these poor maintenance people. And they roughed up a janitor at Columbia. Right. And there's all these poor middle-class policemen that they spit in. And then there's Byron Donalds come here and they call him Uncle Tom and a traitor, this Middle Eastern students. And they shout, you know, go back to Poland or the final solution. We don't like these people. They're spoiled. I think the Americans are concluding that. They're spoiled. We don't like these administrators and presidents that won't stop it, and they're scared. And we understand why it continues, because the faculty, the president, the blue state city council, the blue city mayor, the blue state governor, they all agree with the agendas of these left-wing students. And that's been really a lot of moral clarity. A lot of it is, we always were told, you can be against Israel, but you're not anti-Semitic. They're showing you that they're one and the same. Every time they try to rough up a Jewish kid or chase him into the library, they never say, wait, before we do this, you look Jewish to us. Could I ask you if you support Israel or not? They don't. And the same thing about, well, we're for Palestine, but we're not for terrorists like Hamas. They are. They're the same. Their flags are there. They have Hezbollah banners. And another myth that they blew up is, oh, the Democratic Party has this base, the kind of crazy base, you know, transgendered issues, open borders, the squad, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, the Black Caucus, but this is not they're one and the same. Joe Biden cannot open his mouth about any of this without saying Islamophobia. He cannot just say this is an anti-Semitic. This is what the Democratic Party is in toto. And Joe Biden, to the degree he knows he's there, the people around him, his wife and the Obama advisors, this party now is completely Jacobin left wing. And there is no base. And then maybe there's a Fetterman or two, but that's it. And that party is committed to open borders. They're committed to these demonstrations. They are anti-Semitic. They do not like Israel. They rejuvenated Iran by design. And that's who they are. And I think American people are seeing that today. And the longer this goes on, it's going to hurt them.
The exchange between the protesters at SUNY New Paltz and the head of the school there, it was infuriating. It reminded me of what happened at Evergreen in Washington State. I remember that smugness of these protesters, as though they hold all the cards, and the capitulation of the head of school, who was coming at it from the same angle. Like, he has no negotiating power, and they're completely in charge. It, again, makes my skin crawl. Here it is a bit in SOT 3.
This isn't ending until our demands are met. We don't control the contract pieces the way you laid it out.
But it's our money. We are giving you this money, and so we are paying your bills. We are paying your paychecks. It is your responsibility, President Wheeler. It is your responsibility to figure it out.
What I would like to do is to be able to work with you to bring your concerns to the places where they can make an impact.
And you can come here
and
come back with what they say.
Mm-hmm.
There's a card with the demands on it. Mm-hmm. You can take it to your people.
I hear what you're saying, and I also have to say that I would rather that this not escalate the way other campuses, because you all have done a phenomenal job.
That's up to you.
That is your responsibility.
That escalation will come from the police.
Good. I hope that gentleman he likes this, because he's going to get a whole lot more of it. And so too will Northwestern, Rutgers, University of Minnesota, all of whom have caved to the demands of the protesters. They're all on bended knee, begging for these students to forgive them for being so awful in their alleged support of Israel. They're creating things like an Arab Culture Center at Rutgers, a Department of Palestinian Studies, and on it goes. They're not fighting them. They're like, you know what? You're right about everything. Take over our campus, and here's our new Arab Center.
Yeah, and all he had to say was, I want to remind you, it's not your money. You pay tuition, which is a fraction of our expenses. Here's where the money goes and comes from. It comes from the taxpayer. They give us tax-free income on our endowments. They subsidize your student loans to this tune of $1.7 trillion. They give us massive federal grants. The endowment, such as it is at these schools, comes from alumni who give money. That was their money. And without it, you wouldn't be here. You are subsidized in every aspect. You think it's expensive? It would be twice as expensive. And he could easily say that. All they have to do is, I think, we're just looking for one person who says, Ben Sasse was really good when he said, no, we're not going to do that at the University of Florida. And they would fold. You just have to say, we saw that with the Arizona State Union young woman who was kicked out. And she broke into tears and sobbed. I can't believe this is happening to me. This generation they're hothouse plants, and they need to be exposed to the real weather. And I think it's, I know this sounds crazy, but I really do believe, after being on the Stanford campus and watching Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Columbia, they are going the way of Bud Light, CNN, Target, and Disney. They don't know it because you can't stand out and say, but a lot of people are not going to send their kids there. And they're going to lower their standards to get more people to come in, because the top students will not go there. Employers will say, if I hire that graduate, they won't know how to analyze. They won't be skilled in composition or oral fluency. They won't be mathematically competent, but they will go to human resources the day they get here.
Yeah.
And I don't want those people in my company. And I think that's going to happen.
That's
And
right.
they're
It's
destroying
amazing as
their
you watch
brand.
these students. Every time we see one speak up, like in that last video, it's very clear there's somebody who's very gender confused leading the charge there. I don't know what it was, is a he or a she or what they go by. But Joseph Massey, our favorite poet, he was calling them Osama non-binary. And that's exactly right when you look at these videos. Osama non-binary would really want us to offer more support for Hamas. And we're listening. These university presidents are listening. We've got to talk about what's happening at the University of Chicago and the demands, not only for goggles and alleged like gauze to bind their wounds, but HIV tests, Plan B. And I'll tell you the third most outrageous thing when we come back after a quick break. Don't go away. More with VDH. Don't forget to buy his brand new book right now. Go do it now. The End of Everything. Okay? Be right back. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over. Along with hiring thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS has kicked off 2024 by sending over 5 million pay-up letters to those who have unfiled tax returns or balances owed. Don't waive your rights and speak with them on your own. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal possible. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you. Whether it's business or personal taxes, even if you have the means to pay or if you're on a fixed income, they can help finally resolve your tax burdens once and for all. Call 1-800-245-6000 for a private free consultation or visit tnusa.com/Megyn. Can your savings weather an economic storm? Think about what you've put away for the future. Inflation can render cash worthless. Real estate can crash like it did in 2008. Economies built on a mountain of debt can fall like a house of cards. There are very few physical assets you can invest in that can stand the test of time. But gold is one of them. It's why many people are flocking to gold right now and why Birch Gold is busier than ever. Through a little-known tax loophole, Birch Gold lets you convert a retirement account into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And the best part, it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. To learn more, text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit on gold. Again, can your IRA or 401k weather an economic storm? If not, consider looking into Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and explore securing your savings today. Okay, so University of Chicago, I mentioned it in the tease, Victor. The students have updated their supply needs where they're continuing to protest there. As I mentioned, they want goggles, they want medical tents, they want tables, they want HIV tests, they want Plan B. I guess they're having a lot of sex there. They have to figure out whether anybody got pregnant and abort their babies while they're sitting there. And they want dental dams, because they're having a lot of oral sex too, which they want the public to fund. You can't make this up.
I mean, you would think they would say, well, we want gloves and plastic bags and garbage bags and bins so that we can clean up after ourselves and we can live in a hygienic, healthy place and not damage our own nest, our university. But instead, it's how can we satisfy our base appetites? It's it just gets back to that original thing we were talking about right before the break. These are not normal students this generation. These are the results of an affluent, leisured society that told them morality, ethics does not count. You got to get a cattle brand on your back that says Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and you got to be launched onto your trajectory and your title and letters after your name, your salary, your zip code. That's all that's going to matter. And it comes from the parents as well. And the faculty, they're not really adults, Megyn. The faculty are just big students, adult students. They went out into graduate school. They went to these types of schools, elite schools. They went to their graduate school. They went right back into academia. They've never worked at 7-Eleven. They've never tried to drive a semi. They're not out in the real world. They're not in the corporate world. They're not in private enterprise. They don't know anything other than tenure, and they can always whine and cry and somebody will listen to their stories. They're neurotic, they're narcissistic as a group. And not everybody, but as a group they are. And now we're seeing, it's like a scab. We tore it off October 7th, and what followed tore off the scab. And what we saw for the first time for many people is a very putrid wound underneath. And at least when May 20th, June 20th, July 20th, all of that mess, Joe Biden kept saying, Donald Trump is to be blamed. Donald Trump is to be blamed. It's on his watch. But Trump was in the opposition party or the opposition ideology to that, and he wanted to stop it. It hurt him nevertheless. But this time, Joe Biden is a Democratic incumbent president, and these people are people on his left or Democrats. So it's even worse. It's like Humphrey in the 1968 student protest. The protest against the opposite party, people expect. But when you're in the same league with these people and you can't stop it or you won't stop it, it really hurts you. And I think that's one reason why he is dipping in the polls the last 2 weeks. The scene of these people, they're not very sympathetic, kind people, and people do not want to associate with them.
No,
they really
it's
don't
amazing
like
to hear the ones at Princeton saying that they're going on a hunger strike. They're not going to eat anything. They're not going to drink anything except for water.
Yeah.
But you can support them if you just want to have a 24-hour fast too. If the hunger strike is too much for you, let's face it, we all know they're not going to hunger strike. They're going to be fine. It's a joke. And these people over here want us to really feel for them it's interesting to figure out their priorities. They're not asking for condoms. So they just want like the after effect things. Like, okay, if I get HIV from all the sex I'm having, I need a test for it. I need the Plan B pill so I can abort my baby that I may conceive here while I'm having all the unprotected sex. But if there's oral sex, I do want a dental dam, which it's been a long time since I've understood what that is. But I guess they don't want like HPV that you might get from oral sex. So that HPV, they're like, that's where they draw the line. HIV, might as well give it a shot and then just test for it after. I mean, look, who are these people? And where are they finding the privacy or the time to do all these things? I don't know. By the way, we looked at their Instagram account, these University of Chicago people. And from a recent post, they added tips from BLM on how to protest. One of the most important, if you are white, put your body between those who aren't and cops who may arrive. Okay, so the white bodies need to protect the black bodies if the evil cops show. I mean, the same themes, right, through all of these protests. We read, the Politico had a big article on how this is Soros and Rockefeller and Gates funding the organization that's funding a lot of these protests. It's like, you're right. This is a capture by the left. And we're just seeing their little soldiers having all their sex, which I doubt because they're not attractive, on these campuses.
Yeah, I think it's really a wake-up call to traditional people and conservative people, maybe Republican people, that their attitudes so far when they saw Take a Knee or what happened with the Oscars or any of this stuff in the popular culture, they just said, I'm done. I don't go to first run movies. I don't go to Tonys. I don't go to Oscars. I haven't watched an NBA playoff. I don't want to watch the Take the Knee stuff. I'm done. I don't listen to NPR. I don't watch PBS anymore. But I don't think that's enough, that monastery of the mind just to vacate, because these people don't want to let you go. They'll find you. They've taken over all these. Columbia.
You will pay for my dental dam.
Yes. Columbia was famous, Jacques Barzon and all of these, even Lionel Trilling, all these wonderful scholars. It was famous for their Western Civ and Great Books program, and they've destroyed it. Yale was famous for their Great Strategy program, that Donald Kagan, all these great scholars. I get really upset because we just let these people, these vandals, come in and hijack all of these wonderful institutions that they control now. And our attitude has been, okay, write them off. I'm going to Tennessee, Blue Ridge Mountains or something, and just get away from this. And I can understand that, but we can't all do that. We've got to start fighting back and being blunt with them and not worrying about when they call you, racist, homophobic, whatever the term is. You just have to to be blunt with them, because they are in the minority. And I think still, even at this late date, when you look at the polls on Biden's agenda, none of the issues from crime to energy to foreign policy to the border poll 51%. And so
you're right. We lost something. Like the loss of Harvard and Yale and Columbia, Princeton, like that matters. They used to be great institutions that we were super proud of.
They did.
Where you could get a great education in the classics. No longer.
No. And why did we just say, okay, it's fine to have Columbia has 1/3 of all their students are foreign students. Did we audit them? Does Columbia determine who gets a student visa?
Right.
Did anybody say before you get
That's
a student?
a real stat.
Yeah, let's go
just to underscore that, Victor, 1/3 of the students at Columbia are from other nations. They're here on student visas. They're not even Americans. Go ahead.
It is. And almost all of them are from illiberal regimes. They're from places like China. They're from places like Egypt, Jordan, the West Bank, Gaza, Syria, Iraq. And we never say anything about it. And then they come over here, and for the first time, they use our freedoms to protest against their magnanimous host. And they know that if they were to do the same thing, go back, if they had purple hair and they were transgendered or gay openly, they'd be killed in Gaza. They'd be killed in the West Bank. They would be killed in Syria. They'd be put in jail in Egypt. If they demonstrated against the government, they would be hounded out. Their family would be hounded out. And so it's so funny, especially in the case of women, because they don't protest in the Middle East. They have a secondary status. They come over here, and rather than enjoying the freedom and giving a little bit of credit to their host who said, you know what, I don't have biases against foreign students. If you meet our criteria, welcome the world in. And rather than saying, wow, that is really weird. Russia doesn't do that. China doesn't do that. Or countries that do don't have the wherewithal to give me this beautiful dorm and this food and this class. And I'm going to repay all that by what? Death to America? Take over the classics department at Columbia, trash, yell and scream, call for a whole people to be wiped out. And at some point, they have no gratitude. They're ungracious people who do that, who come in as foreign students. And I think that's another thing. Boy, Megyn, if the Republicans take over the Senate and the presidency, I hope there's enough people with sense that says, you know what, we're going to look at the whole thing. Do we need 1 million foreign students here that are unvetted? Do we need to give them endowment income that's on tax? Do we need to really be in the student loan business? We weren't for years. Why subsidize all this? Do we need to give these massive federal grants to campuses that don't follow the Bill of Rights of due process or freedom of speech? I think there's going to be a big move to that. And these people are putting their heads in the noose and they don't understand it. But we'll see. And, a lot of people are also saying,
we got 2 minutes to the end of the Sirius XM show. Can you stay an additional 10? Can I get you for 10 extra?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I want to continue this, and we're going to have to do the hard wrap in a minute. Did you see the students at GW University? They held a mock trial against the provost. They were chanting off to the guillotine, and then yelled off to the gallows with you. This guy at the Stew Studio has been doing good work on this, but like the calls for violence are getting a little bit more explicit. Guillotine. I mean, like to your point earlier, can you imagine? Imagine a bunch of white students going on some historically black university campus and chanting things like guillotine, like dying a death like that, and you're off to the gallows with you. How long do you think they tolerate that?
Not very long. And it's going to remember that for Israel to survive, they're going to decide, not Netanyahu as they claim, but all of them, that entire wartime bipartisan coalition government, they're all on the same page. They have decided that if there's going to be no more October 7th, they've got to destroy Hamas. And the only way they can destroy Hamas is go into Rafah. And if they do that, there's going to be greater and greater protests, even though schools are going to be out. And so we haven't seen anything yet. This is going to be to paraphrase Kamala Harris, what she said in 2020. Remember, she said, these demonstrations are not going to stop, nor should they stop. They're going to go all the way to the elections. She thought that was cute because, as we learned later, the left thought that it really helped Joe Biden. This time, they're not going to help Joe Biden. And she's not going to say that. She won't say that this time. I bet my life she won't say, these are great protests.
They're banking
they're
banking on these kids going home for the summer and this stuff dying down, because this is terrible for their side. And that's why we're seeing more and more leftists say, this is not good for us. Kristi Noem is out there on her book tour. The book launches this week, and she's trying still to do cleanup on her I murdered my puppy story, changing the story yet again. And in the midst of this book, telling some untruths that seem pretty blatant, including her, once again, it's got the same theme. She tried to build herself up with this story that turned out to be false. In the dog story, it was true, but she misjudged the mood of the American people when it comes to puppy killing. And the story that's been outed as untrue is her alleged meeting with Kim Jong Un. She got asked about this by Margaret Brennan on CBS's Face the Nation. And I'll let you just listen to the soundbite. Top 14.
You talk about meeting some world leaders, and one specific one, quote, I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong Un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all. Did you meet Kim Jong Un?
Well, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage. And I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits.
So you did not meet with Kim Jong Un. That's what you're saying.
I've met with many, many world leaders, I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that. This anecdote shouldn't have been in the book. And as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that was adjusted.
All right, this is unbelievable. So she never met with Kim Jong Un. It was a lie. It wasn't true. Wound up in her book. And she says, as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made changes. As soon as it brought, so she doesn't have the nerve to just say, it's not true, we made a mistake, I apologize, and this is who I mixed him up with. Because I don't know if she wrote any piece of this. I don't know who's making up the lie, but I do know it wasn't just brought to her attention. She read it into the audiobook herself, which to Margaret Brennan's credit, she asked her about. Listen here.
I know you read this book before it was published because you released video of your recording of the audiobook. You didn't catch these errors when you were recording it?
Oh, Margaret, as soon as it was brought to my attention, I took action to make sure that it was reflected. And you're talking about a book that hasn't been released yet, that's been corrected before it's been released. And you haven't said one thing about Joe Biden saying that he was in prison with Nelson Mandela, that he started the civil rights movement.
Okay, nice try. But deflecting to somebody else's bad behavior does not mask hers. She read it as soon as it was brought to my attention. And then I've met with many, many world leaders, but I'm not going to talk about the meetings, as if Margaret Brennan just has some burning desire to hear about Kristi Noem's meetings with foreign leaders. She put it in her book. She's trying to test whether it's true because she knew accurately that it wasn't. And Kristi Noem's trying to brag about her self-importance without doing the very thing she says she does in this book, which is make hard choices and be this tough leader. She's not tough at all. She's too scared to even admit she lied and she screwed up in her book. It's an ongoing theme. There's another meeting she claimed she had with Emmanuel Macron that she claims she canceled, which also turns out to be untrue. Her publisher's having to undo that. Every day we get a new one, Victor. So what's going on with Kristi Noem?
I don't know, Megyn, but don't you feel that when you've been when somebody's been examining you or you're going to make a new course correction in your career or somebody's going to give you a promotion, at that time is when you go over very carefully your CV or what you say, and yet she's obviously thinks she's on the short list of vice president. So she's got this memoir coming out. But rather than going over everything so she doesn't end up where she is now, she sort of exaggerates things and in the worst possible why, when you're going to go under all this scrutiny, would you exaggerate? And the sad thing about it is, does she really think whether she's going to be picked as a vice president or not is going to depend on whether she met with Kim Jong Un or not? But she thinks it is, and she thinks that she's in South Dakota and she wants to have foreign relations experience and met world leaders, so she does this. And the other thing is, I've watched her career, and I don't want to get into personality, but something's going on there. She doesn't look the same. She doesn't talk the same. Her commercials are different. They're all about her. Right. And I don't know what's happened. She's altered her appearance radically. And her personal life shouldn't be any concern for people, but it is. And I don't know what's going beyond, but all I can say, if you're on the vice presidential selection team for Donald Trump, that's the last thing you need right now. And prior to this, she'd been a pretty good chief executive of a small but important state. And she was kind of really played up her out west cowgirl, hard work. Her husband and she raised this family, nuclear family. But then why do things that just obviate all that? I don't understand it. But it's a very natural thing, apparently.
She's gone, look, I'm not opposed to fake hair at all. I got to put a couple extras in here, and I love it. And sometimes they're in, sometimes they're not. She's gone full, she's like Lady Godiva with the extensions down here. And she's a sitting governor trying to be considered for vice president. It's not professional. She's obviously had a lot of Botox and filler. It's a lot in her face. She did a weird ad for capped teeth, which I guess she's also had. She's trying to be like some sort of a glam queen instead of a respected leader.
I know it. I think she looked at Sarah Palin's, who came from a small state and didn't have a lot of experience, and what they did to Sarah Palin. And I think she thinks they made fun of Sarah Palin. They said, I think remember Nicole Wallace was one of her handlers. And they kind of leaked to the press, Sarah Palin doesn't know how to dress, and she's kind of a buffoonish. She was very pretty, I thought, naturally pretty.
She was.
And she doesn't know anything about foreign affairs. So obviously Christy Roman said, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to go this Sarah. I'm going to get a professional, sophisticated, glamorous look. I'm going to say that I've met with foreign leaders. That's my supposed vulnerability. And it lost all authenticity. That was her strength, that she was a down-home person that lived in a normal, sane place with a sane husband and great kids. And she was actually very pretty. She was aging very naturally, I thought, wonderfully. And she didn't need any of that. She didn't need to brag about all these people she didn't meet. And I think she's taken herself
and also the nature
out.
of the brag, Victor, right? The nature of the brag is, I stared him down, how she allegedly, I have it in front of me here someplace in the soundbite transcript, but I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. Oh, you're so tough. Meanwhile, it never happened. And she's trying to act like she was the victim. She came out with a statement saying, this morning in a 15-minute interview, Margaret Brennan interrupted me 36 times, once every 25 seconds on average. But when liberals go on Face the Nation, they aren't interrupted even once. In the fake news media, there are two sets of rules. The conservatives are always treated differently. That's why Americans don't trust the fake news. I resent this. Because you and I both know this actually is a problem with a lot of folks out there. That's not what happened to her. I watched all 15 minutes. Margaret Brennan barely interrupted her. She's counting moments where Margaret Brennan was trying to wrap overly long answers by just doing what anchors do, which is she was totally appropriate. I defend her fully in this exchange. And how dare she try to use an existing liberal media bias, which we all know is there, to excuse her lies, her obfuscation, and now new lies about the dog incident, Victor. Before I play that soundbite, what do you make of what I just said?
Well, she's right. You're absolutely right that she's right about it, but that's cause to be very careful, because she understands that that's what the left-wing media do. And you know that when we all get interviewed by accident or ambushed, or if you write a syndicated column and you're on the conservative side, and I think I've written over 2,000 of them now in the last 30 years, 25 or 30 years, guest and regular, you know that what the left is going to do. So that doesn't increase your exposure to, criticism, you kind of double down and say, is this right? Am I exaggerating? And you kind of underestimate or you underreport what you're doing because of that media. And I know that that's maybe not fair, but it seems to me that when she went on there, and I don't know if I would have gone on there, but she went on there, she should have had in her mind, they're going to ask me every single question to embarrass me, and here's what I'm going to answer honestly. Yes. She's going to say, I exaggerated, or I made that up, or I shouldn't have done that, and I take full responsibility, and it's never going to happen again. And that would have ended it.
She couldn't, because she read the audiobook, and therefore she had to own that it was her lie.
And the same thing with the dog incident, Megyn. Remember,
let me show you the dog incident. So she's trying to do this is the last, I know you got to go, but this is the last one. So she's trying to do revisionist history on the shooting of the 14-month-old dog, because there's been such backlash to it across the aisle. And now and keep in mind, in the original book excerpt, run by The Guardian, but quoting her book, the story was the dog was, she took it out on a bird hunt. It was uncontrollable. It was disruptive. It was brand new. They hadn't been trained. And that on the way home, she had swung by a friend's chicken farm, and the dog, Cricket, started attacking the chickens and killed a couple of them. And then Kristi Noem reimbursed the farm owner for the chickens. And then she killed Cricket with a bullet between the eyes in a gravel pit. And she said when she tried to get a chicken out of Cricket's mouth, Cricket went for her, which, I mean, frankly, that's not totally unknown by dogs when you're trying to take a high value reward out of their mouth. It doesn't say that this is a bad, aggressive dog who needs to be put down. So now she's changed it. She did not say in the book he was a serial killer. He was a serial attacker of people or children or anything like that. But here's how she's spinning it now in SOT 16.
This was a dangerous animal that was killing livestock and attacking people. And I had little children at the time. Our operation had many kids running around and people in interaction with the public. And I made a difficult choice. I think you're a mother too, and you have little kiddos. Would you make a choice between your children or a dangerous animal? And I think I would ask everybody in the country to put themselves in that situation, because that's what I faced.
Because you put it in a part of a chapter called Bad Day to Be a Goat. And then after you shot the dog, you, quote, realized another unpleasant job needed to be done. Walking back up to the yard, I spotted our billy goat. You said he smelled and would chase kids, so you took him to the gravel pit and shot him twice. How do you justify that? How was the goat a threat? And I'm asking you this because it seems like you're celebrating the killing of the animals.
Not at all. This has been a story that my political opponents have tried to use against me for years. It's well known in South Dakota, and it has been to other people. And I want the truth to be out there and to understand that these animals were attacking my children.
What? Now we've gone to the Cricket was attacking the children, killing livestock. Okay, a couple of chickens got eaten, and attacking people. It snapped at her when she tried to take the chicken, but she's inflated. She's lying, Victor. She lied about Kim Jong Un. She lied about Emmanuel Macron to the point where the publisher is now correcting those two excerpts. And she lied there to Margaret Brennan, in my opinion, seems very clear.
Well, but her point to put these stories, because I haven't read the memoir, but is the point, it seems to me, that she's trying to tell her audience that although she is a woman governor, she does tough macho stuff. And maybe she doesn't have enough experience, but people on the national stage, when she's Trump's vice president, wouldn't want to screw around with Kristi Noem because she's capable of shooting a billy goat. Is that the idea?
She can kill puppies.
Yeah. I mean, I live on a farm, and I've lived here my whole life. And it's that I was sympathetic to a degree. I had a dog that when you're driving a spray rig, there's a PTO shaft, and the dog came out of nowhere, ran in, got caught. And I won't get into detail, but completely eviscerated. I mean, you could see the innard. The dog had about a minute. And I always carried a gun because there's coyotes that would come up to the tractor and stuff. And I put the dog out of its misery and buried it because I didn't want to take it all the way in town.
That's humane.
It was disassembled, the dog. I mean, there was a leg missing, and it was still alive. Okay. So I put it out, but I would never, this is the first time I've ever said that publicly. And I got really depressed for about a week and I didn't, it was horrible to see it happen. The dog flew up 20 feet in the air when the shaft caught him. But it's not something I would want to talk about. And it didn't show my character one way or the other. Just, if you're on a farm, things like that happen, but you don't revel in them. You don't brag about them. You just feel bad about it. And you don't know what to do when you're out in the middle of the country, and you don't want to go take a box full of a dismembered dog who's still alive and wait in line at a vet but why she thinks that that's a sign that, and we, I have 4 dogs. You've heard them bark, Megyn. I don't think they're very well mannered sometimes. And once in a while, if they find a dove or something on the farm and I take it out, they will snap at me. The idea you would shoot that dog after, it's just incomprehensible. Yeah. And I have grandkids that come out and everything. So there was so many, I think you did a good job. There were so many loose threads that are inexplicable, other than she wanted to make a point that don't screw around with Kristi Noem. She's capable of being real tough. Kim Jong Un, she was tough with him. She's tough with dogs. She's tough with goats. She's from South Dakota, and she would be a much better candidate than Sarah Palin would be. And you should pick a small state female governor. And she's
really tough.
Very, very.
If she's really tough, she should come on this show. Yeah, I've been very fair to her in the past, very fair. When her book came out, the last one I had her on, we had a great exchange, and I will ask her very hard questions, and we'll see how tough she is. She should, if she can withstand my questions as somebody who's trained in cross-examination, then we'll see. Maybe she can rehabilitate herself. But so far,
that would be a great chance, Megyn.
She's making a laughing stock out of herself currently.
Yeah. But she could come on your show, and when you ask her, she could say, that was something that was untrue, and I regret it. I got caught up in the moment. On the dog, I tried to portray those tragic incidents in a fashion that was not accurate, maybe. I didn't mean it that way, but I know why I did it, and why I did it was wrong. And anytime you have to take an animal's life, it's not something to be gratuitous about. And she could be fine. She could just tell the truth to you.
Yep.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
This strategy is not working. No, she should come with some humble pie and a sword to fall on and a hat, and it should be in her hand. That's how the interview should go if she wants to rehabilitate herself. Last question on her. Is there any chance now Trump picks her as Veep?
Well, we've just seen one candidate implode. We don't know what the others are going to do. They can all implode. And I remember Thomas Eagleton, when he was a really nice guy, and all of a sudden we found out he had electric shock treatments in 1972, and they kicked him off the McGovern ticket. So anything can happen, but as of now, unless she come up with a mea culpa that's sincere and honest and exact, I don't think that Donald Trump doesn't need that right now. He needs a solid, non-controversial person that the media will have trouble. He needs a guy I'll be candid, he needs a guy like, I'm not saying guy male, but he needs somebody like a Ron DeSantis, a Tom Cotton, a Mike Pompeo, a Glenn Youngkin, who have been through the whole gamut of left-wing attacks. They've stood up, they've been in government. All 4 of those guys are great. Somebody like that. And you don't want to just balance by gender or race, or I think, because of the volatile situation that Trump is in, he needs somebody that's sober and experienced and veteran he can trust. And somebody like that, I think,
Victor, wish you would do it. Wonderful to see you, my friend.
I can't do that. No, not at all. Okay.
Too smart for that nonsense. Mary. All right, go get his book. It's called The End of Everything, How Wars Descend into Annihilation. I'm promising you, you will enjoy it. You will feel like a better person. You will feel smarter and better able to comprehend and ultimately discuss the complex issues facing America today. Speaking of people who might be on Trump's shortlist for VP, Vivek Ramaswamy is back with us tomorrow. We're going to see you then. And by the way, I just want to let you know that if you have any interest in my Strudwick and my own travails with my dog, he's still alive and well. You can go sign up for our American News Minute. Go to MegynKelly.com and you just put in your email. We don't sell it. We don't bother you. We don't send you a bunch of crap. We send you one email on Fridays with some highlights from the week and all the news of the week in 1 minute or less. But I will confess to you, and this week's update on Strudwick is epic. Epic. He was particularly terrible this weekend. And I told him, you better shape up or I'm shipping you off to Kristi Noem's farm. That's what's going to happen. No, I didn't. But I thought it, but I wouldn't actually do it. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.